How did you pull off such a cool community? Like your MixerMind, it's low pressure and the people that I've connected inside are they're just cool.
I guess it would have to go back to when I did my first online summit in 2021. And I thought all the experts that I was interviewing were just so incredible that they had to know each other. I ended up having a virtual mixer to introduce them. And after the first virtual mixer, everybody was like, oh my gosh, can we just do this again? And I remember Brenda McGowan.
Welcome to another episode of Before We Hit Record. You can see that I have Linda Sidhu right here. Hi, Linda. Thank you for being here, by the way.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's going to be a fun conversation. So, the listener who might not have ever heard of you, you are a lead generation strategist, a super connector, and expert in creating compelling personality quizzes that attract numerous new subscribers. In 2 words, I would have just called you the quiz queen because that's how I first learned about you. But I am happy to let the listener know, Linda is the creator of the MixerMind. So, like, you've heard a number of guests so far on this podcast: Karen Gillan, Holly Hillier, Marisa Corcoran, Tracy Patterson. I think there was one more, Dallas Travers. These are phenomenal people who I met in the MixerMind. And all I can say is it's such a cool environment where it's low key. People joined to they joined knowing that we're here to partnership with each other. And I think the quote that you said, Linda.
Yeah, so this is my sticky message that I came up with. It's in order to gain more visibility, you have to create meaningful connections. And then in order to create meaningful connections, you do this through people experiencing you.
There we go. Too many times I've heard other podcasts, and they're great, phenomenal. It's just that the guest, the speaker, the host, even we, including me, can just come across as one-dimensional, And sure, we're there to show up and deliver like strategies and tips and tricks, surrounding our expertise. But it's like, I mean, we're living, breathing people with things we like and don't like and believes in, and families, right, Linda?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is where we get to know each other. You get to know me, I get to know you. The listener gets to know both of us, and it works out pretty well. And it's a pretty cool, authentic conversation. If my voice is new to you, hi, I'm QUAY.jo, the host of The Art of Online Business. I am rather new. If you don't know me and you're like, where the heck did Rick go? Head down to the descriptions below. And there's 2 links down there. One is where Rick shares what he's doing in the AI space. Same old Rick, same old great insights into online business, but now he's using AI to help you, the online entrepreneur, increase your impact and reduce your overwhelm and increase your profit in your business. And then you can also hear an interview that he did with me, sharing about why he chose me to carry the torch or pass the baton to me, so to speak, as the new host of The Art of Online Business. And one thing I'm absolutely positive about is you're listening here, you can follow for more tips and tricks and strategies. I almost said tragedies. Strategies and behind the scenes business peaks and, of course, Facebook ads goodness for online course creators. And with that, I'm honored to have Linda Sidhu here.
Aw, thank you. I'm honored to be here too. I just love your energy. Yeah, so I'm really grateful for this experience. Thank you for having me.
Yay. Well, it's an honor to have you. I mean, really, how did you pull off such a cool community? I was sitting on the couch downstairs with my wife and saying, if I could do this whole thing again, I would love to like create a community like Linda's. Like your MixerMind, it's low pressure, and the people that I've connected inside are they're just cool. How did you do this? Where did this idea come from?
Oh man. Okay. So I guess it would have to go back to when I did my first online summit in 2021. And I thought all the experts that I was interviewing were just so incredible that they had to know each other. And I ended up having a virtual mixer to introduce them. And after the first virtual mixer, everybody was like, oh my gosh, can we just do this again? And I remember Brenda McGowan, a mutual friend of ours, she's like, if I could just do virtual mixers every day, I think my life would be complete. Like she said something that she just loved it so much, right? And I started to kind of follow the breadcrumbs, I guess. Like I was like, okay, well, if people want more of this, I should do more of it because to me it was fun. People may not know back when I was in corporate, I was in pharmaceutical sales.
Oh,
But yeah,
okay.
I was in pharmaceutical sales and I worked in Ohio and I also worked in Kentucky. Part of my territory was in Kentucky. And so back when I was not even owning my own business, I would bring people together in just random different ways. One of my favorite ways when I lived in Ohio was doing a Kentucky Derby party. And I would invite my friends over. We would dress up, we would wear hats, I would serve mint juleps and, we would bid on the horses and it was just so fun. And so I love a good themed party. I always was this way back in college as well, is just bringing people together and having fun. And it was really just, I guess, in my design. I don't know. Like I had a human design reading with Danielle Laura, who's also in the MixerMind. And she's like, yes, Linda, you're a 2. I'm a 2 and a 6.
Which is a
And the
partier?
2, or maybe it's a 4. I think it's a 4 and 6. Sorry, I lied. I'm a 4 and a 6, I believe. And the 4 is a community builder. So as I started to learn more about myself, I realized that I have so much fun to bring people together. And I do think in this online space, there's a different dynamic of making business, right? Like it's like usually a coach or a mastermind. And I guess at some point I was like, look, we're all experts. Can't we just all come together and like talk about behind the scenes and try to figure out how to support each other? I mean, the rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so I started to follow the breadcrumbs and I was doing these virtual mixers and people just loved them. And I realized it didn't matter who I asked, everybody would say yes. So I remember I was so nervous to ask certain people. I'm like, hey, Dallas Travers, would you want to attend this? She said yes. I invite Gemma Bonham Carter. She says yes. I'm like, everybody wants this. And so eventually it was a dear friend of mine, Zafira Rajan, which I believe you know. She's in the MixerMind. She was in your peer pod. And she told me, Linda, you need to monetize this. And I'm thinking, how can I monetize this? This is just too fun. And sure enough, eventually I realized that this was all I wanted to do myself. Kind of going back to what Brenda was saying, I was like, this is all I want to do. And because it's fun to have, connections. It's fun to support other entrepreneurs. It's fun to have strategic conversations. It's fun to mastermind with peers. And so I just kind of, launched the MixerMind. And that's what brought us together, actually.
Well, I think I DM'd you trying to get in, but somebody didn't read my DM for like 2 months. And then I was so happy though, once you finally responded and that you let me in after the doors have closed. Because I
Yeah, I felt terrible about that. So one thing we didn't share, which kind of plays a big role in the MixerMind actually, is last year I got diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Um, and it was a good diagnosis. Everything was like, you're going to be fine. It's textbook, gold standard procedure. That's what the doctor told me. He was like, if we
okay,
could
that
treat
sounds like something
every
else.
cancer. Well, I'm sorry, what?
I was gonna say sorry, that sounds like something a doctor would say. I'm like, is there ever a good diagnosis?
Right, like, that's what they tell us when you get thyroid cancer. They're like, "This is a good diagnosis," but it actually kinda is, once I learned more about that. So, what he was trying to say was that they have a way to treat thyroid cancer that's gold standard that they wish they could replicate for other cancers, which they just don't have. After I understood that, I realized it was, you take the thyroid out, you do radioactive iodine, and the rest of the organ's gone. So there's no chance of usually for it to like regrow, for the cancer to regrow, because there's nothing there. Um, but what I didn't realize was going to happen, which he didn't tell me about, was the complication that happened. It was actually this time last year. I had a blood clot after my second surgery and it collapsed in my throat a week after the second surgery. And that was actually a life threatening situation. Yeah, it wasn't good.
So this was a pretty big blood clot then, my gosh.
Yeah, I'm sure it was because as soon as I woke up from the second surgery, I was telling him I couldn't breathe. And I actually had a panic attack within the first hour after waking up. And they kept telling me it was just anxiety. I was nervous, but this isn't what I felt the first surgery. Because in the first surgery, they just took half the thyroid. They didn't think it was cancer. And then the pathology report was like, oh, it is cancer. So now we have to go back in and take the rest of it out. So I had 2 surgeries. And for the entire week after April 19th last year, I kept telling my husband, I kept telling the doctor. I actually went to the ER, I think 2 or 3 times. I kept telling people I couldn't breathe. And when I would Google it, it would say hematoma blood clot. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this could kill you, you know? Like, so then I would have a panic attack because nobody was listening to me. I was getting gaslighted. People were just like, what are you talking about? You're fine. And I'm like, no, I'm not fine. I've been in this body. I can't breathe. Yeah. And then finally on April 25th, the hematoma had collapsed in my throat. And if you Google this, it can be problematic because if it obstructs your airways, that could be detrimental and lead to death. Luckily, it didn't do that. I was 5 minutes from the hospital. I got to the hospital, they stabilized me, and I was in an emergency surgery within a few hours after that. And I was okay. I was finally okay. And when I woke up from that emergency surgery, the doctor was like, you were right. Way to be an advocate for yourself.
We'll get back to the episode in a moment. Do you need Facebook ads help? But maybe Facebook ad management is not right for your business at the moment, which is fine, but you would like my eyeballs on your ad campaign. I have a new offer. The people who've signed up for it so far are loving it. It's called Facebook Ad Setup to Success. In the next 30 days, you can work with me over 30 days. We will together set up your ad campaigns and get them running successfully the right way, the exact way that I do for my clients. That means you get 3 calls with me over the period of 30 days. And in between each of those calls, you get unlimited access to me, like Voxer, Slack. That means I'll show you how to set up the ad campaign, all the things you should consider. We'll also go in and look at your funnel, and I'll make recommendations to improve your funnel. And then in between each call, you get coaching from me still, because you can record your screen, send me a message, say, hey, QUAY.jo, what about this? Like, what would you do here in this ad, you know? And I'll respond to you that very same day. It's unlimited support from me and 3 calls from me. It's called Facebook Ad Setup to Success. And if you want my help, one-on-one coaching to run your ads, then click on the link in the description below, or go to, you can see it on the bottom of the screen, theartofonlinebusiness.com/call. Theartofonlinebusiness.com/call. And I'm happy to help you successfully learn to run your own Facebook ads. You were right instead of we were wrong. Sorry for not taking you seriously. Oh my gosh. Well, 2 things. Stay away from Google. I feel like every time I go and Google a symptom in my body, it's telling me I'm the worst, like I'm going to die. And I just, oh, geez. But my wife had thyroid cancer and she had hers removed. Was yours hypo or hyper?
Honestly, I don't know. Probably hypo, I think.
I think hypo is an underproducing thyroid, I think, and hyper is an overactive thyroid, overreactive. I don't know. I don't even. But hers was hypo. So but she had hers. She had a. Well, she tells me this was before we were together, but she didn't slit her. So sorry. If anybody watching the YouTube video can see me going like this, what I meant is she had a big, like, swollen throat, and they removed it, and it was, I don't know if it was like grapefruit size or something really, really large. She said her neck got a lot smaller once they took out the growth and the thyroid. So
Yeah, I think mine was the size of like a tangerine-ish. Like it was a pretty big nodule, and it had, eventually I had it for a while actually, and they tested it the first time and there was no cancer. But actually, when you do testing, the reason why I just had it surgically removed the second time once I realized it was bigger is because technically when they do biopsies, it might not get cancer cells. So I just wanted to know. I was like, get this thing out because it's too big at this point. I think it was causing a lot of symptoms when it was to that point. because I was having a hard time. I was just really tired. And I even think I remember I was having memory loss. And I think it was because I wasn't getting enough oxygen to my brain. Yeah, it was kind of freaky. And so I thought I had long COVID. I went to the doctor. I'm like, I think I have long COVID. I don't feel very good. And, come to find out it was cancer. But the reason why I'm bringing this story up is after the hematoma collapsed, I had to clear my calendar this time last year. I was like, I have to have my health. If I don't have my health, there is no business. And matter of fact, I couldn't even talk. After I had essentially 3 surgeries in 8 weeks on my throat, I could not even talk. And so I really needed to rest. And at that time, I realized that my community, who was part of my first MixerMind, they were sending me gift cards for grocery delivery. They ended up getting together and helping me raise money to get dog walking services for my dog because they knew I couldn't walk. And I even had a couple people volunteer to host Zoom calls for me. And, at that point, I knew that this community wasn't just about propelling my business forward. They became the lifeline of my business during
Okay.
that time.
Sounds like
And
good
so,
people.
yeah, it's just, and so at that point, it was like I knew I needed to double down on this because that's what it's all about is community. Like the rising tide lifts all boats. And so I fully experienced that, embodied this last year. And so when going back to what you said about the Instagram, there was only so much I could handle. And so I eliminated Instagram and wasn't really doing Instagram much. And you had sent me a couple DMs, and you know how it goes into that folder where you don't know unless you go check
Yeah,
it. Like,
the message
oh,
requests. Yep.
and finally, I checked that folder and my heart sank because I saw that you were interested in MixerMind, and I was like, "Oh no, I feel like such a jerk." And so I wanted to make it right, and we obviously let you in. I was like, "If you're still interested, even though the door's closed, like we would love to have you." And that's kind of like where. Like this whole story is to tell you, like that's how it all came about, and so I'm so happy you're in the.
Well, yeah, I mean, anybody listening to this podcast for a bit has heard me talk about it, and even like people will email me, "Oh yeah, you like one of my clients. He's a tax guy, for expats, and he emailed me and he's like, I think I heard you say something about it, and he gave it another name, but I was like, oh yeah, the MixerMind. Yeah, you gotta email Linda and see how good of a fit it would be for you. So like, I want to go back and talk about something that you probably haven't talked about before, but so first of all, you said Ohio is the territory when you were back in pharmaceutical sales, but then you said, if I understood that right, you went to university in Ohio.
Well, I went to Wright State University. I did not go to Ohio University or Ohio State University. However, I did move to Columbus after college and loved going to those football games. It was so much fun. But yeah, I lived in Columbus for a while after I graduated and moved from Dayton to Columbus, Ohio.
So you're from Ohio.
I'm from Ohio, born and raised. Yeah,
Gotcha. But now you live in Seattle.
correct.
So there's a couple things. First of all, thank you for giving me a geography lesson. I did not understand when you said Kentucky and the Kentucky Derby. I'm like, oh no, Ohio and Kentucky, do they touch? And I'm looking at Google Maps. They do indeed share a border. So that is intriguing to me. How did you get to, so my wife is from Michigan, which I do know also shares another border with Ohio because we
Correct.
drove
Yeah,
we
they're
drove
north.
from Michigan to Ohio once. How did you get from Ohio all the way out to Seattle? Because I'm from Seattle, well, near Seattle.
So I feel like I have so many questions. Where's your wife from, real quick, in Michigan?
A small place, the same city that Kid Rock was born in,
Oh, stop.
Romeo, Michigan.
Okay, I've never been, but we've gone up there a few times.
Okay. Where?
Most people from Ohio like to travel south. They'll go to like Florida all the time for vacation. I'm like, why aren't you guys going to Michigan? You should really check out. I mean, it's so pretty up there, the Upper Peninsula, and that area is just absolutely beautiful. So I spent a lot of time in Michigan. But to answer your question, I met my husband, who's originally from England, in Ohio, and he and I started dating, and he was working at JP Morgan Chase at the time. He had just taken that job out of college. And he was trying to, move up the ladder. And so he interviewed for this big opportunity for a wholesaler. And, we had been together for about 3 years. We were dating, and then we went on a big trip. He always goes to England. He always likes to go to England and visit family. And we attached a trip to Paris, France. So it was like a week in England and a week in France. And I was hoping that he was going to propose to me because, Paris, like, and we'd been together for 3 years. I'm like, is it going to happen? And honestly, this is awful to say. I checked his suitcase because I was like, is there a ring in there? Like, I need to
Oh,
know.
you're serious?
Find it. Yeah, I did. He knows this, by the way. I didn't find it. So we spent a week in England. I was like, okay, he's not going to propose by around family, obviously. Like, we're on our way to Paris. The entire trip goes by, no proposal. And I'm like, oh, and I finally just threw in the towel. I was like, you know what? I love this guy. It's fine. I don't need to get proposed to in
You
Paris. It's
passed up
fine.
Paris proposal. Okay.
And wouldn't you know, the very last few hours, we go back to our hotel. We had an amazing trip, by the way. And he's like, let's just go grab a drink at the top of the hotel. And we could see it was like 11 o'clock at night. Well, just before 11, but we could see the Eiffel Tower. And so we
Yeah, the
grabbed
sparkling.
drinks
Yeah.
and he proposes finally. And then the Eiffel Tower starts like twinkling and doing its thing. And it was just magical, right? And I was so happy that it happened. But 2 weeks after the proposal, he gets that job that he interviewed for. And we moved to San Francisco within like a few weeks. It was very fast. And I realized at that moment, when you do and get engaged or get married, it is sickness and health, better or worse, all the things, including moving across country for a new job opportunity. So, yeah, I had to quit my job. And then I ended up working for a competitor pharmaceutical company because there was an opening with a competitor. And so I took that job, and by November, so we got engaged in July, and by November, we were already living in California. Yeah. And so we lived there for a year. And then eventually JP Morgan relocated him up to Seattle, and we've been here for almost 11 years now. So
I am sorry, but I don't know. I don't regret moving from Seattle. So, but I'm curious now that you told me you dug through his luggage looking for that ring to see if you could prepare yourself for your Parisian proposal. Where were you hoping he would propose to you in Paris? Because Paris has quite a few memorable sites.
I don't think I had a spot in mind. I just felt like this has got to be it. He's got to. And I will tell you that he was so scared to take that ring out of the hotel room. So when we were in England, apparently his sister had given it to his dad. And we went to England, and so his dad had it. And so his dad gave it to Justin right before we flew to Paris, and he had it in his pocket. And then he was scared to walk around with it. So he just left it in the room. I think he hid it in our room, and that's why it stayed in the room out of his luggage. And he finally did it at the top because he didn't want to have it in his pocket. He was scared to have it and walk around.
Pickpocketed or something. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's so cool you did that. I love Paris. I've been there like a handful of times, and every time I want to move back. Yeah, it's a cool city.
It's a cool city. I think we're going to go there. We're going to take Liam there next summer. We were talking about different, yeah, my son, he's 10. Justin loves to go to Europe for trips. He almost feels home, like grounded when we go to Europe. And it's fun. It's just so different than the United States when you can go to like Portugal and Italy and France, and they're all so different. So it's fun.
Do you speak any other languages besides English?
I wish I could say I could, but I did take French in high school and in college because I did always want to go to Paris. But I can read it, but I can't really speak it very well.
Gotta have a second home in Paris then. And we can
I
change
know.
that, right?
Yeah. So tell me, what did you like about Paris? Can I ask you, like, what were your favorite and why would you want to go back? Like, tell me more about that.
Oh my gosh. It was the first time that I had ever been abroad. And so Paris, what I loved about it, so I guess it could have ended up it could have ended up completely bad, but I loved meeting people who had nothing to do with like the background in the area I was raised in. I really loved running around the city, like, with my friends. I know now that I am much more of a, "Let's go someplace, not be a tourist, but run around and try." Everybody says it, like, "Try to have authentic local experiences," but that's really what I enjoyed. Like, I was there, I lived there. The first time, it was, like, 3 months. I was working there, and I still have not been to a museum or inside of a Parisian museum, and yet that time when I was there, it was like I went swimming, I went roller skating. Oh my gosh, like all these things. They have these they call it like roller skating en masse, I think, like just in a big group. And when I was there, it would happen on Friday nights. And you would go, if you didn't have your own roller skates like me, you would go and you would rent roller skates. And then it was like easily 700 people, if not more. And they would have, people on speed skates who were really good go out ahead of the group and like block an intersection. And then everybody would just kind of roll on through, and you were rolling around Paris, like trying not to fall on your face because of all like the cobblestone roads. And they would just like these chants like ole, 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 and like all this crazy stuff. And so these kind of experiences just really impressed upon me. Luckily, it was my first time abroad, and so they were good, but they impressed upon me, like, you leave the country, you meet people from other countries, you have all these fun, I guess once in a lifetime, you could say, experiences, and I caught the travel bug or the live abroad bug, and I've never looked back since. I'm still living abroad now.
Well, there's something you said that I can relate with, and it's traveling to places and not being a tourist. When we went, we didn't do the typical go up the, Eiffel Tower. We didn't go in the Louvre either. But what we did do is we hired a local tour guide to show us the places or do the things that a local would do. And I think that's the better way. And I mean, it's not a better way, but it's like such a fascinating way to experience it. And one of the things we did was we did a bike ride around Notre Dame, which was really cool. And we also, one thing I remember during that bike ride was the guy was showing us, there was back in the day when they would like get mad at their neighbors, they would actually take a cannonball and like shoot cannonballs at their neighbor. And so there was like a cannonball lodged in a building. And the story was that one neighbor got mad at the other and like shot the actual neighbor's building. But you get to find out random things that are different that you wouldn't know otherwise, right? And so you can see it from a different lens. Which, by the way, we were just talking earlier about how experiences, in order to like, it's just a way to experience life, right? And in order to like, if you can take this into like a business, what I was saying at the beginning is like, in order to gain visibility, you have to create meaningful connections, and you do this through people experiencing you. And it's the same thing on living life, right? Like you grow because you experience different places. Anyway, I just wanted to share that piece because I too feel like that's the best way to visit, is like to do something that the locals would do.
You want to hear a random story?
Yeah.
So when I went to Paris, I thought, because I was in college, single guy, I thought Paris was going to be berets, baguettes, and models. And the model part was true. There was lots of beautiful people in Paris. And also going over there as like a single university student, male, I was like, oh, what's this thing? I get to like kiss people on the cheek multiple times every time like I say hi. It was great. Went to a party, and it was hosted by, well, because so anyway, the mom of the girl whose party it was there. Totally blew that one because I wasn't quite comfortable with the whole kissing thing yet. And so like I was supposed to like give her a kiss on each cheek, and so like I just kind of shook her hand and smiled, and the mom was quite upset at my lack of culture. But here's the story. So I went to Paris, and I was supposed to work there. And God bless this counselor at college who like looked at me and said, "No, you wouldn't do well in a study abroad program. You need to go work in Paris." I was like, "Cool, whatever." So we get to Paris, and this work abroad program, they have like an orientation for like 4 hours, pretty boring, but they made it a point to make us understand that there's like a couple binders on the wall. We're independent. We have to go find our own jobs. They gave us the paperwork, as in like the legal ability to be able to work in France, but we had to go find our own jobs. And there's two binders specifically. One is like contains previous employers and business owners that had employed like previous participants in this program, and the other was people who rented out apartments or had previously rented out apartments to participants before. And so I started looking for a job, and then I met this group of really cool girls to go hang out with. And so we were like basically partying around Paris, and I spent most of my money. And they had a lot deeper pockets than me. And so in less than 2 weeks, I like blowed through all my cash because I didn't know any better. I had a little bit, but I didn't have enough money to afford the, I guess, cheapest apartment that I had not been able to get approved for previously because I was looking during the daytime for a place to live. So then I ended up having to be homeless. And so when you said Notre Dame, I too was by the Notre Dame, but homeless. There was this little cafe across the River Seine from the Notre Dame called Shakespeare and Company. It's still there, or at least it was there when I went back to Paris in like fall of 2022. So it's still there. But starving artist scene, where if you want to go, and Paris has a history with art, right? So you could work there by day and sleep there at night. And so I spent several nights there before I found my place to live, which was in the north of Paris. Uh, and I had no idea at the time until I went there, but I fit in perfectly because the neighborhood was all like Northern Africans, and so that's where I lived for my whole like first stay in Paris. And it wasn't like the best neighborhood. It was pretty rough, but like for me, I fit in perfect as long as I didn't open my mouth and people didn't hear like my American accent when I tried to speak French. No problems whatsoever. And so that was just one of the many stories like of me being in Paris like that first time. It was a crazy, super fun trip though.
I love it. How old were you?
19.
19. Yeah, that's young.
It is young. Yeah, was I 19 or 18? It was right after my freshman year in college, so 17, 18. I must have been 18, or maybe I turned 19 there.
You went to University of Washington, UW, right?
Yeah,
So they are big with encouraging people to go abroad. Is that where it stemmed from?
meaning like
Just University of Washington. There's so many people I've met that have studied abroad, and they all go to University of Washington, or they graduated from there. And I wonder if they have some type of, well, I was just curious if that's the culture at UW. It's very encouraged, right?
I don't remember if that was like the culture or not. I do remember though that they talked about studying abroad, and for me, I wanted to do it. I was what was your major again?
Oh, I was in marketing and communication.
Marketing communication. Oh, so you chose a smart major. I chose the major my dad wanted me to be in, which was physics, and I hated it. And then I went to linguistics because so I spent actually there's this she's not a girl anymore, she's a lady, but she lives here now with her husband down in Mexico where I live. And like we've all become friends because me and her were friends. Like we were suffering through the same like weed out intro physics and math courses together at the University of Washington. And then 20 something odd years later, has it been that long? It's been longer. My gosh. She ends up moving down to the city here in Mexico. Wait, yeah, because 2000 and then, yeah, it's been longer than 20 years. Wow. So anyway, I suffered in college, like suffered. I would go to my classes and spent easily like 3 hours in the math tutoring center and then like another 3 hours in the physics tutoring center. Like do the math, we were on a quarter system, so like I had a schedule where I finished at either like 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock p.m., but it was horrible. And so after that first year, i I made a complete left turn and decided, what do I like? And I had taken a French class the whole time, like each quarter. And it was a class that I didn't have time to study for because I was slaving away, like, in the tutoring centers trying to make the curve in I hated curves, by the way, but trying to make the curve in physics and math. And so I decided, oh, maybe I like this foreign language thing. So I picked linguistics, and they let you study abroad, and I went to France, and it was great.
I love it. I do love it. I really do encourage people to be able to leave the United States or leave their current, their country. It doesn't matter where they're living, and just explore. I think there's so much beauty and so many things you can learn just by doing that alone, educational. And it's just sort of creates a foundation for success. And it's not surprising that we're both in entrepreneurship and we both love to travel and we love to like take risks, try new things, and just experience life, right?
Yeah. Yep. I would say the creativity of that is fostered when you go overseas really does help you. It's helped me in thinking of different ways to approach businesses. You just learn from a younger age that the way you view the world isn't the only way for it to be viewed. And I think that's very important in business. I think you'd agree. Like when you need to pivot or you need to think of a solution, like this thinking outside the box